Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Astoria, New York-based jazz drummer and composer Brian Woodruff. He opened up about his third album as a leader called A Centering Piece, recorded with the OKB Trio. Over the years, he has performed with Bobby Watson, Marian McPartland, Jerry Hahn, and he's been on the Today Show. He has been the house drummer for mega church Unity of New York for the last 14 years, and is the founder and organizer of the Blackbird session. He played with a revolving cast of some of New York's finest jazz players during its 3.5-year run. There are plenty of stories like this and many more tales. Enjoy.
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So let's go ahead and start off here and talk about A Centering Piece. Talk to me a little bit about, I'm sure the world right now, post-COVID and even in COVID, as we're on the tail end of it, we could probably use quite a bit of that. Talk to me a little bit about what this album means, especially now.
It was written before COVID. I don't think that the ideas that I'm thinking of are timely, and they may be timely, but I think that we could always find a time for them to be timely. But what I was thinking about, it's actually dedicated to a Catholic priest who's been around me all my life, and who I looked up to as a father figure. And I wrote the song for him, and I wrote it instrumentally. And when I finished writing it, and I had written it for him because there's a song from my first album called Chorale, and it was written in a classical harmonic style. And he's not always easy to understand jazz harmony, so when I decided to dedicate a song to him, I wanted to make it a simpler type of more traditional classical style harmony. So I came up with the bass line, and then I knew that the song was for him. And the melody came out, and I kept jabbing at these silly titles. But when the title A Centering Piece came to me, then the lyrics fell out of my head. And the lyrics come from conversations that we had, and we were talking about ideas from, he was a turn-of-the-century Catholic theologian, philosopher who's trying to reconcile religion and God with Darwin and evolution. And he said that humanity and life in general is evolving towards God, which was an idea that resonated with me. But also, as I was thinking about this person who was very prayerful and very centered, and who's inspired me to try to go for the same sort of spiritual harmony. And when I say spiritual harmony, you may notice that on the cover of the record, it's a little bit obscured, but medieval art is usually put in a mandorla. And a mandorla is the almond shape that you get when you have two circles that kind of cross each other. And I've read all sorts of different things about the meaning of the mandorla. But what Father Ed, the person who I dedicated this, told me it means is that the person in the center has opposing forces in their life, and that they are comfortable inside of all of those opposing forces. They understand that those opposing forces will never resolve, but they live within creative tension, and they make harmony with it.
Beautiful. So talk to me about how the seeds of jazz got in you. How did all this begin for you?
Well, I grew up in Highland Falls, New York. Well, I lived there until I was 3. I shouldn't say I grew up there. What do moms do with kids? They just find anything to do. Highland Falls is just south of West Point. So West Point, they have parades all the time, and there are drums. So I heard drums from the time I was really little. So when they asked us to choose an instrument in 4th grade, drums were the clear choice. 7th grade, I started taking private lessons, and I was interested in 70s rock and all the stuff that was around at the time. But eventually I started getting bored with it, and I was looking for something deeper, and my private drum teacher had played me some Coltrane, and I knew that that was it the first time I heard it. I loved how light the drums sounded, and the music just seemed like exotic. And, we didn't have the kind of access to jazz in the 70s and early 80s that we do now, because it was almost like it was fading away and turning into fusion. And so that sound of straight-ahead jazz was something I really loved.
What was the first live show you saw that really blew you away?
Well, the first one that really blew me away was not my first live show, but the one that really, that was over and I was hooked, was seeing Freddie Hubbard in Hartford, Connecticut, because I was living in Winslow Locks, which is about 10 minutes north of there. Everyone who was anyone in the Connecticut jazz scene was there, including Jackie McLean. He was kind of the hub of the jazz scene in Hartford. But the band was Carl Allen on drums and Nat Reeves on bass and Mulgrew Miller and Kenny Garrett and Freddie Hubbard, and it was just an amazing concert. And people who are my age who were there, we still talk about it.
What were the beginnings like for you, being a professional musician? How were the gigs? How did everything kind of take off for you?
Taking off would be probably a bit of a stretch. It was definitely a grind. Like, I played in the subway. I played for tips at South Street Seaport. I toured with Chorus Line for a while. I do remember really wanting to be in the city to play jazz, and they were giving me these offers for cruise ships. And when I heard the money, I was like, there's no way I'm leaving New York for that. But then when Chorus Line called and they said the money, I was like, oh, right, So I did that, just playing with different people around the city, and sometimes I got to play with some heavier people and, getting recommendations and stuff like that. But, there were times where I was lugging my drums around on the subway. There were definitely some dues and some hard work.
You have a history with Bobby Watson. Talk to me a little bit about kind of a Kansas City connection there.
I'd like to tell you it's deeper than it is, but we played a concert back around 2007 or something like that, and that was really exciting for me. He was in Brooklyn, and we formed at a school I play at, and a friend that I play with there named Jeff Newell was very tight with Bobby, and I also knew Bobby as a student from Manhattan School, except that it was just us passing in the hallway. I never had a class with him. So, we had a good talk about that, and we hung out in the city a little bit, and that was really nice, and playing with him was really a thrill. He's a great musician,
So you have been around some pretty heavy players and cats throughout your years. What did you learn from them, especially when you were younger, that has helped you teach younger musicians that you're around now?
Sometimes I was kind of headstrong and too pig-headed to listen. I do know that, just playing around, I got to play with Rufus Reid, and just from playing around, I started to get, this attitude of, this is where I want to put the beat, and this is how I want to feel it, and I got a little too strong about that, because I always had good skills for adjusting at times, and then when I got really headstrong, I was like, hey, you got to adjust to me. And I think that Rufus Reid likes to put the beat in a certain place, and he was really upset with me because I was putting it in, I kept following him, deferring in a way because, oh my goodness, I'm playing with Rufus Reid, and he sort of wanted me to be strong. So it's sort of this strange thing, when you think it's important to defer, all of a sudden, and I was like, well, what does he want me to be? I'm just hooking up with him, and he expected me to be on the front side of the beat. And that taught me a lesson that I actually thought I knew about. I have to be the player to make everyone sound good, and I also have to sort of intuit and see or feel what they need from me. And he wanted me and needed me to be way on top of the beat because he likes to play behind, and he really showed me that. That was great.
Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into your younger self around the time that you were starting to perform and play, and you could give your younger self one piece of advice from what you've learned throughout all the years. What would it be?
Get out of your own head and don't think. React. The music is given to you from what you've learned and from the other players you're playing with. Yes, you have agency to shape it, but all in reaction.
Now that the world's waking up and live gigs are coming back and we're on the other end of this COVID thing, what did you learn over this quarantine lockdown that's going to make you stronger as you reemerge to the stage and with this new album?
It's a process that started for me before COVID, but coming out of it, I do feel like I'm in this new place where I'm not trying to prove anything or feeling like the same thing about I can play music in a reactionary way instead of a worrisome, fearsome sort of way, because I just feel like I can be myself now, and some of that has as much to do with my age as it does with coming out of COVID. But I think that there's this kind of beautiful fresh start sort of thing happening. Like, we can celebrate New Year's and say what we're going to do, but it's pretty artificial. This one is very real, and it's real for everyone. So I think that that's like a really great thing that we have right now.
So when we do return, what do you hope we all realize about the power of live music, both the audience and the musician?
That it's about communing, and it's communing in a way that we weren't able to. And imagine if everything we did was through a machine, like how much is missed. There's more spirit when we're physically connected. And I don't mean physically connected necessarily touching, but just like in the presence of another person. Although I would like to say that I was able to feel that often, like teaching lessons and not necessarily performing, because I'm not right in front of the camera looking at the person when I was performing, like in a streaming situation. But I just think that there's that much more presence.
So final question to you is this. Everyone has a perception or an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life and lead it. Who do you think you are?
Oh, well, hopefully it continues morphing. There's a part of me that hears that question is, just who do you think you are?
Yeah, exactly. You're totally right.
Yeah, and, like I've always been trying to find that out, and I will continue to find that out. It's funny, the humility comes upon you gradually, like you didn't have confidence, and then humility and confidence like really go together. It's a very strange thing. But that's sort of where I am, like everything in me is quieter than it was when I was younger. So I guess morphing and continuing to morph and hopefully becoming more of who I am instead of like looking around and wondering who I should be. I think that you're looking for me to like stamp an identity, and I don't know if that's possible. Like I can't put a T-shirt with my name on it and you know who I am. You have to take the time too, because I don't know.
Right. That's a great answer. It's a great way to wrap everything up. Thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I really appreciate it. Good luck with the album and the return to the stage.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Astoria, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Brian for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.